Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this, I think, penultimate session in the Retrofit stage this afternoon. This is the second session we've done focused on the role of Retrofit Coordinators. And this focuses particularly in on what the role of Retrofit Coordinator should be in the world of funded retrofit. So this is where public funding's in play. Things like the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund, what has been the Local Authority Delivery Scheme, and then of course we've got Eco, we've had Sustainable Warmth, and we've got the Home Upgrade Grant and Eco Plus coming, haven't we? So there is a lot of this kind of work kicking around, and there's been all sorts of different approaches adopted, all by people who are qualified and accredited retrofit coordinators, but they're different styles, different approaches. Some we're more keen on than others, if we're honest. So this is really a session to look at what that role should be in terms of supporting good outcomes. And to discuss that with us today, we've got two qualified retrofit coordinators, very much leading lights in their field. They're involved in different ways. So we've got Monty from a company called Equans, who are a large contractor who have developed their own approach to retrofit coordination, which last night they were highly commended in the Retrofit Academy Awards for, so certainly a very good approach. And then we're going to hear from Harvey, who wears many hats, My Home Survey and Osmosis ACD, and you're also a Retrofit Academy assessor and sometime tutor. So, and that's more around independent retrofit coordination. So they're both PAS compliant approaches, and these are two certainly very good approaches, but very different from some of the others that are being deployed. So we're going to have two fairly in-depth presentations, around about 15 minutes, and then we should have 10-15 minutes at the end for questions. So start thinking those up now. We're going to start with Alice. Over to you.
Hi everyone, quite loud. I do project a little bit. So my name's Alice Monty, Head of Retrofit Technical Solutions at Equans. If you don't know too much about Equans, we are a construction company, as David alluded to. We mainly work with social housing. Over the last 10 years, we've been looking at energy efficiency works. Last 3 to 4 years, we've been really focusing on PAS 2035 and PAS 2030 works. We are what's kind of known as a turnkey solution provider. So everything from that strategic planning all the way through to retrofit assessment, design, installation, coordination, and the monitoring and evaluation as well. Any retrofit coordinators or anyone that's familiar with PAS will notice that's very in line with the actual PAS 2035 process. It's an approach that we kind of really think is a good approach, so that's why we follow it. So how we actually interact with PAS as a business, we are actually a PAS 2030 installer as a business for all measures, not just kind of a select few. Then in terms of the actual PAS 2030 compliance, we've actually got in-house PAS 2030 compliance officers, compliance managers as well, that deal with keeping that accreditation up and reporting to our accreditation body. In-house then as well, for PAS 2035, we've also fulfilled a lot of the roles for PAS 2035. We've got in-house retrofit assessors, coordinators, air tightness testers as well. We use both the pulse kit and traditional blower door as well. And we've been developing these retrofit specialism internally over the last kind of couple of years. We've had so many big changes and we've kind of invested a lot into PAS. One of the ways we've done that is developing these career pathways around retrofit. So in the South, in my team, we've been taking people on from a variety of backgrounds, whether no experience, maybe domestic energy assessor experience, other experience, training them up through what we call intense shadowing to become retrofit assessors to begin with. 3 to 6 months of shadowing, internal training, sending them on the domestic energy assessor course, retrofit assessor courses, and then seeing where else we can take them. So training them up on pulse kit, training them up as air tightness testers, thermal imagers, retrofit coordination as well. So we've been reinvesting with that. We've also been employing people through Generation UK, particularly good charity that works with taking people from challenging backgrounds and bringing them into retrofit. We've been running retrofit boot camps for all of our staff, really, from director level down, support services, commercial teams. We've got Clive here today, who has been delivering that in-house, not in-house, as part of the Retrofit Academy. and we're hoping to do that now kind of on a monthly basis. We've actually produced an e-learning module, mandatory for all staff on PAS 2030. So even if it's not kind of at the tip of their tongue, it should be in the back of their minds to have that kind of culture that PAS 2030 is really important for us as a business. Active contributor, you always hear me piping up at these PAS forums, asking questions, making comments, but we want to be active contributors in the space. And disruptors, so we're always working at innovative products, whether that's off-site panels, monitoring, evaluation, that technology around that. Big part of my role at the moment is trying to bring or get the innovation, the compliance aspect to catch up with the innovation, because we do focus highly on that PAS 2035 aspect. And then ultimately we're delivering. So we're delivering a lot of social housing decarbonisation fund schemes from the demo, wave 1, wave 2, we've got a pipeline going there. So we're not just talking about it, we're not just doing stuff internally to bring up that culture, but we're actually delivering as well. So bringing it back to retrofit coordination, who can deliver the retrofit coordinator role? There's lots of options there. I'm probably not going to say what you think I was going to say, but I don't think it matters who the retrofit coordinator is, or who they work for, rather. The one thing that I do think matters is how good quality your retrofit coordinator is. So then you've got to be thinking about what makes a good retrofit coordinator. So, number one, are they putting the client first? Are they taking that risk-based approach as well? Those are the two things from a retrofit coordinator process you've got to be thinking about. Are they impartial to measures and products? If you're failing on that, you're not a retrofit coordinator in my eyes, and you shouldn't be under your accreditation body's eyes either. Are you going to be there happy to make those unpopular decisions? It can be a very lonely place being a retrofit coordinator sometimes. Anyone that's done it will know that you're often the hated person in the room, whether that's with clients, ops teams, designers. Got one of my designers sitting there in the front. But it's a difficult position to be in. So as long as they're happy to take on that responsibility, that's what matters. There's a few other things there. One of them, excellent understanding of retrofit assessments. Really key for me, I think all retrofit coordinators should actually be qualified retrofit assessors as well. That's just us, because not only should you understand a retrofit assessment, but you should be there to be interrogating that, and that is the role of the retrofit coordinator. And are they on site? You don't want a retrofit coordinator who's sitting at home all day. We talked a lot about that in the presentations that were on yesterday. So we work in a variety of different ways. Equans is a huge company. We've got north, central, and south regions. We all work a little bit differently. We work on loads of different schemes where sometimes it's client-led retrofit coordination, sometimes it's retrofit coordination that, although we as primary contractor will be responsible for, we'll be subbing that out to external consultants or self-employed. There's different approaches. I don't think there's one that's particularly the best way. We've also now gone down the in-house route. So as I said, we've got in-house retrofit coordinators, in-house retrofit assessors. Why have we done that? Well, we keep talking about a skills gap. Even when we've got qualified retrofit coordinators, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're experienced retrofit coordinators. I think Tim Freeman put it really well yesterday, that doing the retrofit coordinator qualification is very much like completing your theory test, and then it's like, go out and drive. Well, no, you can't just go out and drive. One of my colleagues has suggested maybe we should be doing maybe a bit of training or buddying up of retrofit coordinators for their first year. Good suggestion, I thought. But we have had, so where we've had clients-led schemes, often, as was discussed in that previous presentation, you have a client who is a qualified retrofit coordinator, maybe for that QA process, but they're not actually the retrofit coordinator on the scheme. Really highly encourage that with clients. I'd love to see more of that. We had a really bad example, I won't say who, but where it was client-led, all the pressure was on that individual in the client side, and actually the project got to site, and then they left because it was too much. Obviously, that's awful. We don't want anyone leaving their job because it's too much pressure, and it is a lot of pressure sometimes being the retrofit coordinator. And also, obviously, we've got a project that's got to site and no retrofit coordinator, and we want continuity the whole way through a project. External consultants, I've put there not all, because as I said, we work with loads of external consultants, and it works really well. But there can be issues with maybe not understanding Equans processes, the client's processes, sometimes not having a health and safety person that they can just knock on the door. As I said, big organisation, we've got fire experts, we've got planning experts, we've got health and safety experts that we can just go to. The the amount of documentation that's involved in retrofit coordination. We're actually moving to Viewpoint as a way of kind of storing all this information, providing it to clients. There's some retrofit coordinators out there that will have their way of doing things, whether that's through a data platform or they just want to upload directly to Trustmark. It's about kind of making sure that we're sharing all that information correctly. As I said, and then obviously same issues if you've got kind of self-employed, if you're relying on one individual retrofit coordinator, the kind of projects we deliver are at scale, big projects, it could take 3 or 4 years potentially. Obviously more risk if you're relying on one individual. It's not to say that any of those are bad ideas. And these are pictures of my retrofit coordinators that we've got doing various bits and pieces on site. So advantages of having in-house RC. So I'm going from the client perspective here, Equans perspective and the industry's perspective. So from a client's perspective, all of our retrofit coordinators either have that direct or indirect through our operations teams experience and knowledge of our clients' existing stock. So geography, logistics, that kind of thing. Our retrofit coordinators are involved really early on, before a project's even conceived sometimes. So for example, with all these Wave 2 applications, we've been helping, actually looking at the property, giving, data, doing all the desktop work, going out doing the retrofit assessments, going and doing the modeling before a project's even actually conceived. The trust, obviously, if we, as long as we work well, we've got existing trust with clients, which is always a good thing. Communication and delivery is part of the team. It's potentially good from a client's perspective if you've got that ops team and RC who's actually already on quite good terms. It makes things a lot easier, communication quicker. We've actually done a lot with a couple of our clients really in providing a lot of time and resource around workshops, technical workshops, so much so that we keep kind of getting asked to come back and present. So from a client perspective, their understanding within the organisation, we hope that we're improving that as well. From an Equans perspective, it's really useful but also really rewarding to be there from before a project's conceived to right at the end, getting that kind of full experience, strengthening the relation with clients. I think there's this, even from the discussions last week, an idea that contractors are out for themselves and they're the bad guys. Our biggest, other than health and safety, our biggest target and our biggest objective is to have that good client relationship. That's what we want. We want strong relationship with clients. We want new clients. That's our goal in business. Stronger relationships with operations teams, something that I never thought, would come out of this. So we've got contracts managers who were 2 years ago looking at PAS as being some nuisance. Like, what is this thing? And they're now coming to me and talking to me about thermal bridging and understanding, and that whole education piece within our organisation has been huge over the last year and a half, I'd say. As I said, support from other departments, working as a team has been a key thing. So I've showed you our team of retrofit coordinators there that we have in the south under me. I don't know how you deliver this if you haven't got a team of retrofit coordinators. The kind of projects that we do scale a lot of documentation, a lot of people to talk to, stakeholders, a lot of modelling. We've got, for example, Jared in my team will be doing some SAP modelling. We've got Gemma doing the carbon cost-effective calculations. We've got SARS doing the actual write-ups, the medium-term plan, and so on, chasing installers, all that kind of thing. If we don't work as a team on one project, it wouldn't get done in anywhere near as the time that if you're working by yourself to deliver that. And site presence, working for a big contractor, it's expected for us to go on site. Now, our contracts managers say, let's have our next meeting on site. We'll come down to site and we'll do a walk around, that kind of thing. It's expected of us, just being a construction company. And then from the industry perspective, lastly, so you've got multi-skilled individuals in our organisation. As I said, we keep reinvesting that so that we do have multi-skilled individuals. Hopefully that means the standards brought up. We're constantly kind of quality checking the work they're actually doing. We're reinvesting, as I said, so much reinvestment into actually upskilling our workforce. We're employing new workforce members. We're building those teams of experts within the industry. Sharing good practice. I love sharing good practice. We're just talking about how can we share more, good lessons. I've seen more than ever in my experience of the industry, all the contractors now starting to come together, sharing lessons. We all realise there's so much work out there for all of us. let's just talk about what we're actually doing, let's share those lessons learned. And I think we should encourage that further. I know there's a lot going on at the moment, and I think that's great. And then pushing forward the retrofit agenda in organisations like Equans. Before PAS, we're doing energy efficiency works, but to have this kind of encouragement of having the in-house roles has really helped us re-educate our, director levels, people that have been doing building for 30 years plus, thinking of this is the way how you do it. Actually, no. And building those relationships and educating has been really beneficial. So just to summarise, I don't think it matters who your RC is, who they work for, as long as they're a good RC. I think there's some advantages for primary contractors like ours to be delivering those works, but obviously I've mentioned them today, but that does not to say that, client side, whatever, as long as they can do the job, I don't think that's an issue. The thing I do want to get across is that we shouldn't be discouraging organisations like Equans and our competitors for trying to push these standards, reinvesting, and trying to actually increase the speed and scale at which we're doing the works, and contributing to a bigger retrofit workforce. That's me.
We certainly don't want to discourage you from any of that, Alice. Any retrofit coordinators in the room? Just put your hand up. 2. Okay, 3. Anyone considering becoming one? Oh, that's a good number. And so you all want high pressure and to be the most unpopular person in the room. Okay. Oh well, I think that's a bold endeavour. So we're going to hear the other side of not the arguments, but an alternative approach now around more on the independent coordinator role that firms like Osmosis ACD plays. So, Carl, over to you.
Thank you, David. So I'm one of those retrofit coordinators like Alice that people like to hate at times. That's something that comes with a role. But here to talk about the opportunities for retrofit coordinators in funded retrofit. Whilst there wasn't too many of you that are thinking of becoming retrofit coordinators, you're here for a reason. You're evidently interested in what that potential role is. Perhaps it's something you might be thinking about. Perhaps I can try and give you a bit of information as to where some of the potential opportunities are for people that might want to get involved with that. So the real question that I'm going to try and answer for you is, what are the opportunities for a retrofit coordinator, and how do those opportunities sit within funded retrofit programs? So I'll start with a little bit about myself. 50% of my time I work for Osmosis ACD. I am the Senior Retrofit Coordinator, and we deliver a full package of PLAS 2035 compliant services. There's a team of about 10 of us at the moment. Constantly lose track because we're constantly growing. It's such a fast-moving industry. But we're probably working on about 20 different government grant-funded schemes. The only area of the market we don't tend to get involved with is really eco, but SHDF, LADS schemes is where we're predominantly based. And we're involved with delivering all of those programs currently. I also, for the rest of my time, I'm an independent retrofit coordinator. And I offer similar sort of services, but not in the depth that Osmosis do, and not with the specialist knowledges that they do. I've been involved in this industry since 2006. I trained as a home inspector, and as part of my experience, I'm not sure what's happening with my slides, they're going forward. Part of my experience, near the start of the introduction of EPCs, I was actually invited to have a seat on the Energy Performance and Buildings Directive Forum. And I was very much involved developing the quality of EPCs when they first came out, and at policy level was very much involved in developing Green Deal and an eco policy. But that's enough about me. Looking at funded or retrofit coordination services within funded retrofit, I really see there as being sort of three ways in which that is typically being delivered. And it's either by people that are employed by local authorities or housing associations. Jessica Scott Henker from the Home Group, she was actually Retrofit Coordinator of the Year awarded last night from the Retrofit Academy. She's an excellent example of the sort of people that are coming into the industry. She's very new, she's only been within the industry for about 18 months. But that shows the sort of things that people can get involved with. She's delivering an SHDF scheme with over 100 properties in it, yet she's new to the industry. Another route, which is where Osmosis tend to sit, which is via lots that have been contracted through framework agreements. And what is included within those lots tends to vary by cases. Sometimes you might just be doing retrofit coordination, sometimes you might be doing the whole gambit of services that we offer. But that's done via framework agreements. You have to be very up to date with being able to do bid writing to even be able to get involved with those. And the others is through relationships with what I'm going to call a principal contractor, an installer. And within that area, you can either be employed by them or you can be a subcontractor, an independent. And I tend to act as a subcontractor for some installers within that sector of the market. So if you were employed, looking at Jess as a great example of what best practice is within trying to deliver within a local authority or social housing. Jess is a member, or the Home Group are a member of the Retrofit Academy. They rely very heavily on information that they can get from the Retrofit Academy. They're also mentored by Osmosis, so I actually do some mentoring of Jess as she's working through projects to help both her develop and help ensure that the projects are being delivered as they need to. Just because you've got a retrofit coordinator in-house doesn't mean that you have to do everything in-house. So as an example for the Home Group, they actually contract out the retrofit assessments and the retrofit designs. So it doesn't mean that everything has to follow a strict model. There's lots of ways in which the procurement of retrofit coordination services can fit in different models. Interesting thing about the Home Group is, because we're talking about opportunities, well, there's currently Jess that is the only retrofit coordinator, but they're already training other people both internally, and they're looking to build up their team to have 5 or 6 retrofit coordinators to deliver subsequent programs. So there are opportunities within that sort of delivery mechanism. Looking at the Osmosis way of delivering it, sort of through lots on a framework. One of the skills you have to have if you're trying to get involved with that is understanding frameworks, understanding how tenders work. And you have to have somebody within your organisation that's very good at writing tenders to even be able to get it involved with that area of the market. You probably have to be involved with multiple frameworks to stand any chance of being involved. Some of the better frameworks will actually offer some support services to some of these projects. So they'll sit in on the weekly meetings to try and help smooth those projects along, whether it's an SHDF project or a HUG scheme, just to try and do it. One of the things that is very, very important about this approach is that everybody knows exactly what their role is within this project. If they're not, there's things like software compatibility can be a really big issue. If you've got a retrofit assessor that's using a particular type of software, that information then goes to a retrofit coordinator. They're wanting to model it in a different way. If the two aren't compatible, you've got big issues. So they're things that really have to be designed and bottled out right before a framework agreement's even put in place. And one of the things we found out as Osmosis, occasionally you actually have to say, no, we don't want to get involved with that, because sometimes you look at the project and you look at what people are trying to do, and it's not going to work. And as difficult as it can be, sometimes you have to say, no, we don't want to be involved with that. That project isn't going to be compliant, and there's multiple reasons why it might not be. We don't think there's ways that you can actually make that compliant. We're not going to put our name to it. We're not going to do it. Sometimes that makes you even more unpopular, even though Jess was saying we're already unpopular. But through the framework agreement, this is kind of what good looks like. That's an SHDF project. This particular project, I think there was 86 properties being delivered on it. That's what good looks like. What does bad look like? There's nothing there. Didn't happen. And it can. We've had projects where they start. Everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. We're doing retrofit assessments. All of a sudden, you're finding out that the designer perhaps hasn't got the qualifications to actually be a retrofit designer. And then you're trying to find another designer, and then you're having other issues with contractors. There are multiple SHDF projects that were going to be for tens, hundreds of properties that have failed to get off the ground because of project issues that have been encountered as the projects progress. So that's what bad looks like, and that's why I was saying it's really important that from that framework, everybody really understands their roles to be able to make sure that that project gets delivered as it goes, because we don't want that. The scale of retrofit, David will tell you how big the scale of retrofit is we have to do. We can't afford too many of those. We really can't. And being contracted as a retrofit coordinator through a principal contractor or an installer. Well, this is kind of the traditional method where we would normally try and just be installing single measures, and we needed to tick a bit of paperwork, and you wanted somebody to be able to tick that bit of paperwork. Well, everybody has a perception that that's a bad way of doing it, but as Alice said, that can be a good way of doing it. It's not about the delivery model, it's about how it's actually being delivered. That's the really crucial thing about this. And does the installer want to tick the boxes, or do they actually want to do the retrofit correctly? If they want to do it correctly, then this really isn't a bad model. But what I would say about that is you've got to have a strong relationship, so that there are times that a retrofit coordinator says, no, we can't do that, because that's going to be a bad thing for the property. It's going to cause some unintended consequences, or we're not going to be able to claim compliance by doing that. But you have to have the ability to be able to do that. So what are the size of these opportunities? I tried to make it quite simple in what I've done here. Looking at trying to be a retrofit coordinator with each of these, I've tried to rank them. So within local authorities or social housing organisations, this is actually quite a crucial stage, because they're just starting to move into new grant funded schemes. So for instance, the home group I was saying, there's currently one retrofit coordinator, and Jess is dealing with just over 100 properties. For their Wave 2 bid, they're going to be dealing with nearly 1,000 properties. That is over 2 years, but they are increasing the number of employed retrofit coordinators by another 5 or 6. No opportunities for independence directly with them, but they do outsource some of the other roles that need to be delivered. Getting involved with somebody like Osmosis and the opportunities there. Being employed, I've ranked as medium, but being independent, I've ranked as high. Reason for that, Osmosis, we've got a team, we're delivering a level of retrofit coordination services. We can cope with a little bit of fluctuation in the delivery of that, but as we move into new grant schemes and the volumes are going to go through tenfold, we need to be able to call on other people. Now that might be in local areas where we need independent retrofit advisors. It may be we need additional people on board to help deliver some of the internal services, to help with modelling, or some of the... There's a lot of admin goes with retrofit coordination, but you need people that are very understanding of the PAS 2035 process to be able to deliver that. So there's a lot of opportunities within that market still, and then through the contractors and the installers, similar to via the framework of agreement, there are lots of opportunities there. They're probably not of the sorts of scale that there is for the likes of through the framework agreements. This may be slightly controversial, but I've tried to give an indication of sort of salary expectations if you were looking to try and get involved with these sort of roles. If you're looking at somewhere like a local authority, they're typically tending to want to employ a retrofit coordinator around that £28,000 a year price earnings level. If you're looking at contracted or via directly with a principal contractor, it's really going to depend about what your role's going to be within that organisation as to where you're going to sit. If you're coming in as a newly trained retrofit coordinator, we're obviously going to be near the bottom of that scale. But there are opportunities to be able to progress right through to the higher end of that scale. But you have to be leading lights in the industry to be near that higher end of the scale, I would suggest. But it gives you kind of an idea of what the opportunities are and what the potential incomes for. Just to finish that off, what I would say is, if any of you are looking to get involved in this and you saw some of the opportunities that were available there as a retrofit coordinator, please feel free to let me have your details, because I'm always being asked by people that are looking for people that are wanting to get in this, either as newly trained retrofit coordinators or as experienced trained retrofit coordinators to help deliver services. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for two excellent presentations. And opportunity abounds. Interesting to see those salary figures. Very interesting, actually. I think there's movement upwards from there. I've certainly heard of it. Okay, so we've got about 10 minutes or so now to take questions from the audience. And we have a microphone. We've got a gentleman here, and then we'll go to the back. If you could just say who you are.
Simon Pardo, previously Lancaster University and now independent. I came less to hear about how to be one and more to understand how on earth they're going to cope with the challenge, really. And I liked your idea of a whole team and of the client needing to understand the process. I'm interested in individual houses, homeowners. Where I am in South Cumbria, the nearest retrofit coordinator is an hour's drive away. And I have watched houses in slow motion become part of the performance gap. All the little justifications as each thing. I know that the retrofit coordinator would need to be there constantly to see that before each thing is covered by the end of the day. How on earth is that going to happen, particularly in individual houses? Or isn't it?
I don't work on individual houses, so I can't help that. The only thing I can really say is that we've got a scheme that is nowhere near where my retrofit coordinators live. We rely quite heavily sometimes. We do visit site as often as we possibly can, but we rely quite heavily on our site team, resident liaison officers, having a site presence there as our eyes and ears, and we report back constantly. We have meetings every single week to go through, and they can be long meetings sometimes, going through every single detail. I can't comment on the number of I get calls all the time because I'm on the register about retrofit coordinating for single projects. I wish I could help. I can't. My hands are tied with everything that I'm doing kind of on the other side, but I don't know if Osmosis...
Yeah, so at Osmosis we get involved with, it's predominantly via funded schemes, so there'll be HDF project, which could be, it'll be several hundred properties. But I also get involved with some hug schemes where we're looking at individual projects. The process is exactly the same. In both, it's all about considering what is the right thing to do for that property. But having said that, it even starts before that. We talk to the client. What are their expectations of what we're going to do? What are we trying to achieve whilst we're doing that? Then yes, there's the process of the audits, establishing what's there, but then the coordinators using their skills to interpret what's actually on site, what the client wants, to decide what's going to be the options for the building, for the project, and that's the skill that they bring to this. As long as that is then modelled correctly, so we know what potential savings are, whether we're talking about money or whether we're talking about carbon saving, that's then got to be translated to a design. And the Retrofit Coordinator's got a really important role in making sure that that design does everything that it should, the right things for the building. As long as you get that right, the installation bit should be the easier bit. But you've got to make sure that it is communicated to the installers, and that if there are any issues that arise on site, they are fed back to the Retrofit Coordinators so that you can make sure that they are addressed properly.
Don't think it's work. Oh, it is now. Yeah.
Do you, for example, agree that they will not tape over the edges of the insulation until you've seen that there aren't gaps all around it, or each thing? So because things have a habit of being covered over by the end of the day. I learnt you need to be there at lunchtime to see it. How is that going to work on individual properties with a retrofit coordinator?
So what I find, or what Osmosis find, is we can't be on site all the time. But a lot of these projects that we're working on, if they're social housing projects, they will have resident liaison officers that are on site. It's a great benefit having them there. They're there all day whilst the installers are there. Get them to take photos all day. And they can feed them back. They can give us things that we can't see from a one-off visit. Because if the installers know what day and what time you're going, you're only going to see good things. So utilise what's happening on site.
Just to add to that, the coordinator is one role, but the PAS 2030, 2019 installer is a completely different role, and they get audited by their accreditation body completely separate to the coordinator. So they've got to report every measure that they do and every property that they do to their accreditation body separately to the coordinator doing the property as a whole. So there should be pre, mid, post-installation photos. They get audited as well on samples of properties and things like that. So as long as the full PAS process is that's what it's there for, to be holistic. It's not just PAS 2030 in the installation anymore. It's not just the assessment. It's not just the coordinators. Everything together. That's a PAS project. Bit more assurance maybe, but
I don't know.
No, we need
I don't
to
know how
move
it's
on,
affordable
sorry.
for single
Carry
houses.
this on
that's all.
afterwards. We have a question at the back, please.
Julian Williams, I'm a retrofit coordinator. My company is Aber Energy. Where do you get your retrofit designers from, and what's your experience working with them?
It's quite difficult to get retrofit designers. We have gone out to the market. Again, we're a national company, so we've got supply chain leads and managers and things like that can go out to the company and do that kind of thing. We've been working with a retrofit designer who has been very good, been working on projects for a long time, PHPP expert and that kind of thing, been working on all kinds of benefit projects and stuff like that. We do rely quite heavily on them sometimes, I'll be completely honest. But across the business, we are looking at different retrofit designers. It is very difficult to find good retrofit designers, even the expectations of maybe what the retrofit designer is going to deliver on the project, because it's quite hard to define. It's obviously project specific, measure specific as well to that extent. Initially as well, as the coordinator, we probably did a little bit too much of the design work, potentially, because we, where that actually, thermal modelling, even that kind of stuff, where does that actually lie? And it is quite difficult. I'd like to see there maybe be a bit more of a, push on retrofit designers.
Great.
And yeah.
Yep. we're creating a retrofit designer qualification, don't worry.
I echo Alice's comments, and if you find a good one, keep hold of them. They are really like gold dust. As Osmosis, we do some design in-house. I think it's fair to say we thought we were probably going to do more than more when we first started, but we found it's actually it's a specialist skill. It really is, and so it's really important to work with external companies. We've managed to find some good ones. They are difficult to find. You have to be very careful with them when you're checking their qualifications to make sure that they are PAS 2035 compliant. Lots of architects in the market are very good at what they're doing, but they may not have the qualifications that tick the boxes as a retrofit designer, so be very, very careful. But when you find one, hang on to them.
Thank you, John Milner from Bailey Garner, and thanks Alice and Carls for a great resume presentation. I just wanted to ask the panel's opinion about a nuance that you didn't cover, which I think is quite interesting, in that the external consultancy model can sometimes work hand in hand with the contract administration, dependent upon the procurement route. So if you've got an external consultant that's also able to offer some of the contract administration services so that they are on site a lot, they are administering the contract, and that wasn't mentioned, then actually that's an opportunity to tie a few of these things together and possibly reduce the cost of the retrofit coordination service without reducing the quality. Now I would say that, wouldn't I, because I'm from an external consultant. We do perform all the roles that we've been talking about today, but where we think we can offer value to clients is where we perhaps, through the procurement process, are actually acting as the contract administrator, because it addresses some of those concerns about presence, and it addresses some of those concerns about being on site and looking at quality as it's being done. So I just wanted to make that observation more than a question, but I'd be interested in the panel's views.
One of the things that Alice and I are very agreed on is that it's not about the model, it's about delivery. And it's just about making sure that that delivery is done correct, compliantly. So it doesn't really matter what that model is, they all work.
I'd just add to that. We didn't see each other's presentations before this at all, and we've come to exactly the same conclusion, which I think is quite funny, even though we come from opposite scales of it. It goes back to that, there's pros and cons of every setup, potentially. I can see where there may be savings, cost savings and things like that, but then maybe there may be issues with, you haven't got that communication with the ops team in the same way if it's not internal. But I'm agnostic to it, to really clear.
And I think that is the right point about agnostic on the basis of quality delivery, but it was just an option that didn't come out in the presentations that I thought was worth flagging up. Thanks.
Fair enough. One final question, lady at the front, please.
Hi, my name is Pamela. I am a third generation construction family. My husband, the same. We own properties all over England. We made the turn to focus on properties that we build with a whole lot of love and do what's right for the property, against perhaps what our family would want us to do, rather just flip and make money. But with that in mind, we research almost every single material we do, sometimes going against the systems where the actual innovation isn't ready. We've had to really push when it comes even to selling those properties, and the lawyers aren't even ready for the materials that we're using. And on the next build, it's going to be one of our biggest builds. We've got, well, for us, because we are still doing it on the side, we've got the back 4 new builds we're doing in conjunction with Z Power, who are also showing here. And then the front, we're doing the retrofit. Now, we chased retrofit coordinators for months and got nothing back, to a point where we thought, well, why do we need a retrofit coordinator? Because all the companies we work with know their products in and out. They vet them, they have their accreditations and everything. I want to know, what is the key selling point or necessary thing that I need a retrofit coordinator for? Because obviously we just thought, well, bugger this, we're just going to carry on. And then 2, if I was to do a course in at the Retrofit Academy, how long would it take me to just qualify? Because I build already and I've built for a long time.
I think this question's for David.
I think it probably so you're funding that project yourself. It's your money. So there is no requirement to comply with PAS 2035, and there is no requirement to have a retrofit coordinator. So you're not doing anything wrong.
No, I know. I just want to know what the value is.
And if you know it inside out, then please do carry on. You're doing the right thing, and you don't need the extra expense. If, on the other hand, you are less, you had suppliers who are less familiar with retrofit, finding a very good retrofit coordinator would be an extremely good idea. But that's your choice, your decision. There is nothing in the able to pay market which says that you must do any of this stuff. This session's only about funded retrofit.
And what's the benefit of a retrofit coordinator? Like the main benefit? Is it the management?
It's a retrofit professional who's on your side, and that's particularly in funded programs in the past what we didn't have. So the PAS is very clear that their role is to protect the client's interests and the customer's interests and the homeowner's interests, and that hasn't happened in retrofit for decades.
A lot of evaluation around risk. It's process really led. The PAS isn't a standard of you got to hit this. PAS it's all about the process and going through the process to protect the client and reduce risk. So assessment stage, design stage, there's checkpoints we've got to hit, there's documentation that we've got to hit, there's modelling that we've got to do as the retrofit coordinator, bring it all together and then lodge the project under Trustmark. And then once that's lodged under Trustmark, that's there for eternity. So there's that extra reassurance that it's getting a kind of accreditation. But at the end,
Stop.
Very, very quickly, I know we're nearly out of time, but funded retrofit historically has always been about installing a single measure. So schemes have been set up to install, say, PV or air source heat pumps. We're at a time where we're trying to now consider the building. We're trying to create plans for what is the right thing to do for the building over the next few years. What's the right order in which we need to do those things to make this building compliant and make sure that we don't get any unintended outcomes. And that's the skills that a retrofit coordinator brings to retrofit projects.
Okay, thank you. I mean, that's a good place. Thank you very much for the question. It's a good place to leave things. Sorry, we can't hear you. We'll have to leave this for afterwards. I'll speak to you about that. I will speak to you about that. So just one thing to flag up. For those of you considering becoming a retrofit coordinator or already are and haven't found the career opportunity you're looking for, can I recommend you have a look on our stand here, the Retrofit Careers Accelerator, because there's no shortage of employers looking to create jobs. And that's somewhere where we can put you together with the opportunity. So please take a look at that. Thank you so much, Alice and Carl, for a fascinating session. Opportunity abounds and both good answers. Thank you very much.